Hi, everyone. Welcome to Travel Tuesday, part of the Beard Bros Media Network at the intersection of culture and industry. I'm your host, Brian Applegarth, founder of the Cannabis Travel Association International and Applegarth Strategies, an agency specialized in visitor economy strategies and destination marketing. On today's show, we'll be diving into the Emerald Village of West Hollywood, the very first city sanctioned destination marketing organization specifically for cannabis. I'm thrilled to be joined by Scott Schmidt, the executive director of the Emerald Village. In many ways, West Hollywood has led the innovative frontier of the California cannabis experience economy today. And Scott Schmidt has been a steward of that progress. He's the executive director of Emerald Village, West Hollywood, a resident, communications consultant, and Scott has worked in destination marketing, the cannabis industry, community outreach, and government affairs and political campaigns for more than 2 decades, bringing a widespread suite of experience. Whether you're a seasoned cannabis professional or just starting out, you're sure to find something of value here on the Beard Bros Media Network. So let's get started. Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brian.
Any other kind of additions to your bio or things you'd like to share about your experience that kind of prepared you for the role you have today with the Emerald Village?
I think, I've been a West Hollywood resident for more than 20 years. And, as a young kid growing up and going to college when I was back east in Washington, D.C., it was always a place that was special in our community, whether you wanted to visit or live here already. And in the last 5 years, we're really adding to the things that already make West Hollywood special by embracing cannabis, by elevating the cannabis experience, by creating new opportunities for people to enjoy cannabis in ways that maybe aren't available anywhere else.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about the destination, right? So, destination is a really important term when it comes to this travel and tourism and destination marketing, obviously. So tell us a little bit about West Hollywood as a destination, the geographic location, the culture, the brand.
Yeah, so first off, let's get to the basics. West Hollywood is a small city in Los Angeles. So there's maybe 10 million people in Los Angeles County, with 82 cities, I believe. West Hollywood is 1.9 square miles with 36,000 people, right in the heartbeat of Los Angeles. We're in between Hollywood with the Walk of Fame and Beverly Hills with the celebrities and the restaurants, the shopping. And we're really at the center of it. And for more than 100 years, West Hollywood has been where Los Angeles comes to play. We have the Sunset Strip with live music and comedy shows. It started off with the speakeasies during Prohibition and all of those things. And then in the 1960s and 70s, when the LAPD was harassing the gay bars, the gays picked up and left the city of Los Angeles and came to this unincorporated corner of the county where there was no LAPD authority, and they created their own space that's now the Rainbow District. And in 1984, we decided we wanted to govern ourselves and created our own city that is now celebrating 40 years. So 5 years, well, let's take that back. In the early 2000s, West Hollywood embraced cannabis during the AIDS crisis. Mm-hmm. Medical cannabis started in San Francisco and West Hollywood. And a lot of those pioneers have roots in the LGBT community, and created these businesses that look a lot like the dispensaries that maybe people across the country know. And we were serving medical cannabis since the 1990s here. I believe West Hollywood in 2001 was the first city to create its own cannabis ordinance, and say, we're going to legitimize this. We're going to create a formal process. And in 2018, when recreational adult use cannabis became legal in California, West Hollywood said, we're going to issue 40 different business licenses. We're going to create new categories of businesses. So not only are we having medical dispensaries and recreational dispensaries and delivery, but we created 2 different types of lounges. Some lounges where you have full smoking and vaping and, anything with cannabis in it you can consume there. And some where we dedicate a certain amount of the square footage to non-smoking consumption of cannabis. So maybe if you're allergic to smoke or have an aversion to smoke, there's places where you can come and consume cannabis in a way that doesn't involve, sparking it up.
Yeah. Yep.
And we did a merit-based process. And so we got hundreds and hundreds of applications from businesses. Well, I would dare say that anyone who wanted to open up a cannabis business applied in West Hollywood. And so the businesses that we're opening are just only the very best and really great visions that are really taking the cannabis experience to the next level here.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Yeah, let's unpack a little bit of each of those parts that you kind of brought up, starting with the history. It's really interesting in California. You see these certain destinations in California that have this LGBTQ plus history, where that marginalized group kind of organized. There tends to be deeply intertwined roots with cannabis legalization, specifically medical, that you alluded to. Can you tell us a little bit more about that history and some of the pioneers of that, and even the intersection of some of the city and government-owned buildings, and just that was deeply intertwined with that cannabis medical story, safe access?
Yeah, I think, one of the most famous ones is actually from San Francisco. That's Brownie Mary, who, would infuse brownies and take them to patients at hospitals up in San Francisco. And you also have Don Duncan, who later opened up a store here in West Hollywood. Scott Imler was the one down here in West Hollywood. He created the Los Angeles Buyers Club. And they had a location on Santa Monica Boulevard on the east side of West Hollywood. And it was actually a city-owned building. So the city wanted, because of the federal banking laws, it's nearly impossible for cannabis businesses to get real estate. And it's something a lot of people don't think about. So if a building has any kind of financing attached to it, a mortgage, a loan of any kind, you can't move a cannabis business in there. So you either have to own the real estate outright, or rent from someone who already owns it outright. So the city saw that problem, opened up in space. And in 2001, the Bush administration sent the DEA in, raided the Los Angeles Buyers Club. So West Hollywood, our council members like John Duran at the time, they saw the benefit of medical cannabis, because for people with AIDS, especially taking a certain drug cocktail that was very widely used in the late 90s, early 2000s, it suppressed your appetite. And so people were, withering away, and cannabis made you hungry, right?
Right.
And so, in addition to all the other medical benefits of cannabis, reducing inflammation, helping with anxiety, depression, and other things, it made you hungry. And that really helped to offset some of the side effects of the AIDS cocktails that were being used at the time. So West Hollywood, this building was raided in 2001. The city council said, we need to do better. So we created our own ordinance. We recruited 4 medical dispensary collective folks up from Northern California, from San Francisco, from Sacramento, and we said, come on down here and open your businesses. And so we have these legacy medical businesses like Alternative Healing Health, Oz, or LAPCG, the Los Angeles Patients and Caregiver Groups, where they have deep medical experience. Like, you go into these places even today, and they will have like a color-coded labels with all the different terpenes, so that both the customer and the staff can easily pick out what kind of effects they want to get from the product. And you don't see that very often, and it's very specific. But when you're dealing with medical cannabis and the potential benefits that you might get from cannabis, a lot of that is derived from the terpene effects. And so you want to know whether you're getting myrcene or limonene or pinene, because that's going to hit you in a different way.
Yeah.
So we have these legacy businesses. One of those became MedMen. It was the first MedMen in the country, and kind of kicked off all of that. And regardless of how you feel about the corporation, what they did to change the design of dispensaries was a big deal, right? They become quickly known as the Apple Store of dispensaries, because what we used to have was metal bars and blacked out windows and,
Right.
you know, people going back into the safe and pulling out product and those types of things. And you walk into MedMen and there's all the product right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can pick it up and look at the packaging and take it. They have these little, these, I don't know how to even call them, but you can like smell the product and get clearly, and you've got mirrors so you can like look at the flower and see that, oh, hey, good cannabis isn't just green. It, has different colors, and you've got your oranges and your purples and all of that stuff. That was revolutionary in 2016, less than a decade ago.
Yeah.
And when West Hollywood went through this process, we did a merit-based process. None of the 4 legacy businesses were in the top scores. We chose to keep them open because their commitment to the community. And now we have these new beautiful dispensaries. You walk into them, they've got floor to ceiling windows. All of them are displaying their products in
Right.
different ways, but creating a different experience and target. We have Colma, which is a female forward dispensary, and they have a whole section of female owned and female oriented products, things that you won't find in Amsterdam and Barcelona. Bath bombs, vaginal lubricants, go on down the list of anything you can imagine. Whoopi Goldberg just launched a line of products to help with menstrual cramps. All right. So, different places are embracing different markets, in many ways creating new markets, right? Because when you think of stoner culture, for example, women aren't necessarily part of that. LGBT people aren't necessarily part of that. But we enjoy cannabis just as much as anyone else, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, a lot of gems in there. I mean, I want to take a few of those one by one. You mentioned this concept of cannabis in the prohibition days of kind of be behind blacked out curtains and out of sight, out of mind, which when you look at marginalized groups like the queer community, that was actually part of that progress, right? Was being able to come out into the light and have windows and be part of society and not have bars in the industrial districts and all these very similar patterns to cannabis being adopted in the mainstream. And when you talk about these legacy communities, be it cannabis or the LGBTQ plus community, there's this legacy of medical, to your point. And when I think about tourism today, I think about how different going into a medical orientated legacy cannabis shop. And there's only a handful of destinations in California that really have that deep medical data experience, merchandising strategy, staff training. Do you think when it comes to travelers that are interested in the therapeutic effects and the medical specific effects of cannabis, that there'll be destinations that differentiate like West Hollywood due to this very intertwined legacy with medicine?
I think that's a good point. I think that, most travelers are going to come to Los Angeles and then be like, I'd like to try out some weed. All right. It's going to be, it's not going to be what drives their decision. There's going to be very few travelers who choose their destination based on the accessibility of cannabis. And if you're doing that, you probably already know what strains you like and what products you like. Okay. For the casual tourist, there's going to be an element of people that say, I'm looking for, or I've heard about the benefits of cannabis from a medical perspective, and come and look for those. And it's not necessarily something that you will get at a traditional dispensary. One of the things that our government, our city government actually put into the ordinance was that people have conversations with the customers and ask them, what's your cannabis experience? What are you looking for? So that, I had a very bad experience one time, and I'm not going to say where specifically, but it was in a large city up north where I went in with a low tolerance. I'm like, and I'm like, what do you recommend? And they sold me like a 1.5 gram infused pre-roll and expected me to like sit in their lounge on Market Street and smoke it and somehow get back to Union Square. we try and avoid that, right? We want, in West Hollywood, we want to like understand why you are here, what you're looking for, what your tolerance is, and then recommend the right products.
Yeah.
But Brian, I do think you talked about the similarities between the LGBT community and gay liberation and cannabis. And I'm of a certain age, and when I first came out, I think there was one gay bar in the country that had windows, and that was up in San Francisco on the corner of Market and Castro. I think it's called Twin Peaks. And in West Hollywood, if they had windows, they were they had curtains, or they were blacked out, and it looked a lot like gay bars in the '90s. Looked a lot like cannabis dispensaries looked like 5 or 10 years ago. All right. And in the late 1990s, West Hollywood, we tore out the train tracks in the middle of the road and widened our sidewalks, and we created outdoor dining spaces. And so all of a sudden, gay people were out having their cocktails on the sidewalk, and 50,000 cars drove by a day. And what that alone did to normalize LGBT people with just regular folks, that when they drove by and they saw the blacked out windows, they imagined something nefarious was happening, and it probably wasn't good. Or maybe it was, and they were probably imagining the same thing, right? But when they saw that, these are just normal guys, out there having a good time. All right, maybe there's a shirtless dancer or a drag queen, but it was normal. It wasn't scary. And I think when you see cannabis spaces that look like your standard retail business, right? They fit in with the community. They're not causing a nuisance. There aren't, people hanging out, smoking weed on the corner and getting sick, and crime and all the other scary things that, have been put out there about cannabis. It really changes how people think about the flower. It's no longer something that's scary or nefarious or criminal. It's just normal.
Yep.
And
and it really put the LGBTQ community at that nexus, right? With medical marijuana, Dennis Perrone, Scott Imler. So you have this kind of historical legacy, heritage, culture that has this intersectionality. And it's fascinating for me to watch this industry evolve and follow that connectivity, whether it be Palm Springs, where they have lounges in downtown, right in the tourist center, or West Hollywood, which has been leading the pack, or San Francisco, also over in Oakland. You typically see a trend of this kind of marginalized evolution, and what are those milestones? And it's interesting watching how those patterns are so reflective of one another. But let's get in a little deeper now to the current day. So we talked about the history. We talked a little about. Let's tell us a little bit more about the Emerald Village and what your journey has been creating the first cannabis-focused, city-sanctioned destination marketing organization for the cannabis experience of West Hollywood.
Yeah. So as I said before, the city issued 40 different cannabis businesses licensed in 5 different categories. We now have 10 dispensaries that are open. We have 6 lounges that are open. We have potentially up to 10 more lounges that are on the way. They've been licensed, but opening a cannabis business ain't easy. And people are investing lots of money to create spaces and experiences that I feel are unparalleled in the world. We have a place like the Woods, where you have this urban oasis. It's an outdoor garden. You can rent a cabana. You can saddle up to the Ganja Giggle Lounge bar, order an infused cocktail. You can get snacks. And they've got a koi pond and a waterfall, and you would have no idea that you're in the middle of a city of 10 million people. All right. Down the street, you've got Pleasure Med, which has one of the finest food programs of any cannabis place that I've been to, and I can't imagine there's much better. A Michelin-starred chef, and you can do oyster shots while you're smoking a pre-roll. OG Cannabis Cafe has, their comedy shows, which was the first in the nation. They opened up 2019 pre-COVID. And they have comedy shows and drag shows, and you look at the artistry where they have created an art gallery inside a dispensary to kind of enhance that experience and, help expand your mind about what the flower is, what it can do. Um, and we're really creating these special, unique spaces. And in addition to the spaces, when I compare going to a socio in Barcelona or a coffee shop in Amsterdam to a lounge experience in West Hollywood, it really doesn't compare. All right, because so first off, in any of those places, you're paying a 50% premium for California flower. All right, and here, everything you get from California, is California flower. It's grown here, it's manufactured here, it's sold here, and for those of us living in California, we take that for granted. But California flower is like California wine, and it comes, it's next level, and it is widely seen as being preferable to maybe Massachusetts flower or anything else you might get. Likewise, the variety of products, and I touched on this before. If you go to a coffee shop or a socio, you're going to get flour. You're going to have some pre-roll options. You might have a brownie that's not even infused with oil, but with like the flour like baked into it. 90s or 80s style. Come here and you can get an infused beverage. You can get all types of gummies or cookies or edibles. You can get tinctures and topicals and pre-rolls and flavored pre-rolls. You can't buy flavored cigarettes, but you can buy flavored pre-rolls. I don't, you can dab. All of these products are available to purchase and experience. And if you are visiting, we'll let you borrow an Uka device or a student glass gravity bong. And, maybe you don't have $400 to buy these devices, but you can go to one of the lounges and use them. And so that creates that accessibility. It's aspirational, but it's accessible for people as well. And I think that's really what, you've got great product, great selection, affordable prices when you compare it to what people are paying in Europe. And, you have opportunities to do experiences that maybe you can't do at home. Maybe, there are social settings and experiences that, you wouldn't necessarily be able to have in other places.
Yeah, the cannabis experience economy, right? Like this is the new era we're unlocking, is these above board, publicly accessible, beautifully curated, and the data shows that this is what the audience is looking for, is a beautifully curated experience with mindset and setting in mind, A to Z, travel worthy, all these kind of buzz terms of the cannabis experience economy. So what is, if you had to summarize the West Hollywood cannabis experience brand as a destination marketing organization, how do you tackle that? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, so the LA Times once said we were the Amsterdam of the Far West, and the people in West Hollywood got upset about that, because they look at Amsterdam and they think of the red light district, and however you feel about that isn't what we're creating here. We're right next to Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills has that, aspirational quality to it for shopping, for celebrities, for food.
Right.
And in the cannabis space, West Hollywood really is taking it to the next level in terms of the spaces that we're creating, the experiences you can have. A lot of people in the industry, they want to compete on price or product. And that's a losing game, right? Because for a visitor, it maybe doesn't matter whether it's $12 or $10 for a pre-roll, right? They want to go somewhere where they're comfortable. They want to go somewhere where it's somewhat exciting. Maybe they want to go somewhere that has a celebrity owner, so they can tell their friends, I went to Woody Harrelson and Bill Maher's dispensary and bought my weed from them, or I bought it from Jay-Z's company. So there's all those elements to it. So, in some ways we're the Beverly Hills of cannabis. We're aspirational but accessible.
I feel that. I mean, when I'm in West Hollywood, you feel the creative energy of West Hollywood proper, and I feel that it being wrapped in LA and the kind of the Hollywood scene and actors, that creativity level, I feel that that is part of that differentiation of that West Hollywood, because it comes to life. The cannabis experiences are coming to life in such a beautifully curated, kind of like artistic way that I think is really making that destination shine and is reflecting the creative class that is very much part of that community in LA, specifically West Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, for decades, West Hollywood's called itself the creative city. And
Yeah.
you look at the things that have come from this small little town, that have impacted culture. Grinder was created here in West Hollywood. Actually, on a friend of mine, one of my friends was the developer of it. RuPaul's Drag Race started here in West Hollywood. We have all types of things. And I know those are two LGBT things, but you think of like the Sunset Strip. It was the hub of the music industry
Yeah.
for the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
Geffen Records, and those folks would have their offices there, and then they would go across the street to the Rainbow Room and the Key Club and the Viper Room and the Whiskey A Go Go, and they'd see the bands perform live, and if they like it, they could tell them come across the street and sign the contract.
Right.
And that's like the vibe here, is that you
Yeah.
never know. You never know who's gonna be. You never know who's gonna show up. Adam Lambert used to sing karaoke at Fiesta Cantina on Wednesday nights before he hit it big. You can be going to the gym and run into Jeremy Piven or actors that you recognize from 90210, and
Yeah.
they're just here being normal people. And if you do come to West Hollywood and you see a celebrity, treat them like normal people, and they'll treat you nicely. If you go crazy and start snapping photos or whatever, they get a little shy. But if you run into them at one of our lounges, you know, ask them to take a hit. Ask them to puff pass. It's part of
Right.
cannabis culture and community, and it's happened before. We had I was at the Woods Lounge. And it just so happened that one of the owners, Woody Harrelson, showed up with a bunch of his celebrity friends, like James Marsden and others. And one of the people that I was in my group is a guy named Sam Elliott, who owns iPoppy, which is a brand of it. They actually won at the cannabis.
Yeah.
The state fair, right? So
Yeah.
they've got rosin that you use in dabbing, and Woody had never dabbed before,
Right.
and so, Sam showed him how to dab, let him take a hit of his iPoppy product, and now they're carrying it in the store. And they've got gummies now, which are amazing. And that's a type of thing that can only happen in West Hollywood.
Yeah.
And so we're creating these connections, we're creating spaces, and the best part is it's available to everyone. Just bring your ID, be over 21, and you can come to these spaces.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here. iPoppy Whitethorn Rose was Woody Harrelson's first dab. That's pretty cool. That's a
Right?
good little nugget. Um, so yeah, I mean the lounge scene here. I want to just kind of rattle off, like in the spirit of the experience economy. My last trip to West Hollywood, amazing lounges for sure. I also want to share about the amazing hotel scene, the rooftop pools, watching influencers streaming, doing their thing. It's a whole scene that is so bespoke from a traveler's point of view that is incredibly enjoyable. So the hotel rooftops, the pools, the absolute energy and the creative energy is vibrant in so many ways in West Hollywood. As I traveled the lounges with the Beard Bros, we saw cannabis plants up close. We saw at the Woods Oasis, as you mentioned, a koi fish pond, beautiful little nooks with that are curated in a way that are very much kind of a Zen kind
Oh,
of lounge.
you've got the parrots too.
The parrots,
You've got
exactly.
George of the Woods. You've got two hyacinth macaws.
Yep. Yeah.
And I love it when people
No.
will bring their dogs to the Woods Lounge,
Yeah.
and their dogs will see these $30,000 birds, and like, make sure you keep them on the leash.
Right,
So,
right.
sorry,
No,
carry on.
absolutely. And the bar there is incredible. As you come out of this beautiful retail space that's like world class, the way it was designed and decorated and merchandised, you have this huge bar with all kinds of beverages and options from coffee to mocktails and beyond. And then you have these beautiful kind of nooks and private gathering spaces. Can you share a little bit more about how West Hollywood approached the consumption square footage versus smoking versus non? I thought this was really clever from a city approach point of view as far as destination development.
Yeah, so originally the city wanted to have edible only lounges and smoking lounges, because West Hollywood actually was the first city to ban smoking in restaurants indoors, and so it's consistent that we want to provide non-smoking spaces. We realize that maybe that's not a viable business model if you can't infuse the food directly. And so, and there's the packaging and the testing and the dosage issues that come with infusing food. So we did allow for those edible lounges to have 50% of their square footage to be smoking. And the different places, so the Woods and the Artistry, are the two that have opened up under that license type. And so what the Woods did, they created this outdoor space. They've got the koi pond. They've got basically like a garden setting, with beautiful trees and a waterfall. And then they have these private cabanas. So you can smoke in the cabanas. And then the rest, you can't smoke, but you can consume cannabis. So you can have an infused beverage. You can have your edibles or whatever. Similarly, over at the Artistry, so on their second level, they've got a smoking lounge, they've got a dab bar, and then on the third floor, they have a non-smoking area, which they do yoga there, they do a puff paint class up there.
Yeah.
All these different ways to experience cannabis that maybe you don't even think of. Just the idea of cannabis and yoga, yeah, it makes sense. We have one that is not yet open, that wants to do like a spa where there'll be massage tables. You can get in massage with infused oils, and
Right.
you can smoke and get high beforehand, if you want. So we're really imagining different ways to experience cannabis other than just that place where they sell you some weed and you sit down and you smoke and you might be able to order some coffee.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to echo, there's so much we could talk about. Pleasure Med with the dining experience. OG Cafe was incredible, how that was all curated with the shows, and also the ability to get a beer if you want around the corner compliantly in a separate section of it. So just an incredible experience in West Hollywood. Now you talk about all this experience innovation. I mean, as far as a cannabis experience center, West Hollywood is absolutely crushing it. One of the reasons it's kind of starting to surpass, and like, not that they're comparable to your point with Amsterdam. Amsterdam's been around a long time, but it's always been a gray market model. And that limits kind of how a model can really evolve. Although it is complicated, you see the West Hollywood creativity cracking the code on integrating cannabis into a full 360 sensory feast.
Well, yeah, and I think it comes. We want people to come here.
Right.
We love West. People like myself. I've lived here for 30 years. I love this city, and it's an amazing job to be able to go and tell people about it. Right. Amsterdam, Barcelona. They're protesting over tourism. It's not just the seedy thing. It's any tourists. It's not just the cannabis stuff that is really pushing it away. And I think in many ways, cannabis gets blamed in Amsterdam for like the stag party culture, where British bachelor parties will fly to Amsterdam for the weekend and get really drunk, and then decide to go and smoke some weed, and they get sick on the sidewalk, or they pass out, or maybe they fall into a canal, or maybe they get scared they're going to fall into a canal, and whatever. That's not the experience you're going to get in West Hollywood. The experience you're going to get in West Hollywood is really an elevated, curated, cannabis venue with different ways to consume, different devices, different products, uh, more than you could ever think of. And then you compare it either with the experiences that these businesses are putting on themselves, like comedy shows, drag shows, movie nights, yoga, puff puff paint,
Yep.
or go up to the Sunset Strip and go to the Viper Room and see a live band in Johnny Depp's old club. Go to the Whiskey a Go Go, where go go dancing was invented in the 1960s. Go to Mickey's, which is the home bar for drag race girls,
Right.
and see a show there. Go to the Abbey, the most famous gay bar in the world, and it's all walking distance. And we are together but apart from each other. So there's really three distinct districts for, if you include the interior design, the design district on Melrose Avenue, and it's all right here. And if you like reality TV, you can go to Lisa Vanderpump's restaurants, have dinner at Sir or Tom Tom, and maybe you'll see someone from one of the shows. And it's all right in this little 1.9 square miles. And my recommendation, so if you're coming to Los Angeles, just generally, like if you're visiting Los Angeles, don't try and do everything. Don't try and do Santa Monica and Disney World and Universal, because you'll spend all your time in your car. All right? Pick a neighborhood, stay in that neighborhood. So, of course, my recommendation, pick West Hollywood, because we have so much more to offer. From the cannabis to nightlife, arts, culture, shopping, it's all right here.
Yeah.
Beverly Hills is right there. Hollywood's next door. You're in the middle of everything. But if you do choose to go to Santa Monica or have to be at the convention in downtown LA, we're the only place where you can legally consume cannabis in public in all of Los Angeles County, in our lounges. You can buy it at a dispensary in downtown, and Santa Monica just opened their first dispensary. But you can't smoke it legally on the street. And you don't necessarily have, those safe spaces to consume as well. So, the other thing about West Hollywood is it's safe and legal. We have places where it's safe and legal to consume cannabis.
Right.
And I talk about safety because a lot of times, even somewhat experienced cannabis users can have a strain that hits them funky, and you get out of sorts. And having the staff that has the experience to deal with those situations,
Right.
and say, hey, why don't you try this undo product, or let me get you some water to keep you hydrated, and let's go get some cookies from Junior Cookies and bring them in next door, so you can get your blood sugar up. All of those things, you're better consuming in a lounge, because if necessary, and especially for people who maybe aren't cannabis, regular daily cannabis users, right? If you're someone who's just coming here and wants to try it out, or if you're, a novice or even intermediate, you're not a connoisseur, you want to be in those environments. My other advice is start low and go slow. So even if you know what your tolerance is at home, cut that in half, and just enjoy being in the space and make it last. Because the last thing that we want is for you to overconsume, have a little freak out, and either pass out or feel like you've got to rush back to your hotel to get into a safe space, because that's not an enjoyable experience. That's not what we want to sell. We're not about selling you the highest potency product unless that's what you're looking for, right? We're not going to try and sell you the most expensive product. What we want is to understand, your experience with cannabis, what type of journey you're looking to go on, and tie that to the strain, the product, the type of ingestion that you're going to be doing, to make sure that you are getting the closest thing to what you imagine it will be like.
Yeah, I mean, what a thoughtful approach, right? And if, talk about a destination, getting out in front of it, looking at the opportunity, recognizing of licensed tax-paying businesses, integrating them into your tourism-based economy, making sure that public safety is top of mind, as well as hospitality frontline staff safety, which includes cannabis shops and lounges and people serving tourists. And I've seen the, in the markets that I've worked with and destinations, I've seen the negative impact of putting your head in the sand, which is lost revenue, brand tarnish, I've heard stories of people canceling their Michelin dinner appointment because they were given an edible that was over intoxicating, spent half their trip in their hotel room because they went to the wrong dispensary that didn't have that hospitality approach.
That happened to me in Barcelona once.
Right. I was up in San Francisco, and that's why cities getting out in front of this from a destination development, from an inclusion, a social inclusion, a business inclusion. This is the modern day that we have here in California. So we have a few more minutes, Scott. I want to ask you, what do you see? Well, actually, if you could tell me the 3 pain points that you had to overcome to get where you are now as the executive director of Emerald Village, were there 1, 2, or 3 moments that you had to cross a threshold to move the innovation and enabling an environment of innovation forward?
Well, yeah, I think, the first pain point was getting these people to work together, right? So we went through this licensing process, and, licensing cannabis businesses is a very competitive, it's UFC, fighting, right? They did not like each other. There were lawsuits, there were ballot measure initiatives, lobbying, and years of fighting each other. And eventually, it was in the summer of 2020, the city sat everyone down and was like, guys, we got to stop this. And so the city got everyone together, and Emerald Village came out of that process. And initially, some of the people that were working with the pre-existing medical dispensaries, they didn't want to work with someone who had worked with the newbies who won the new licenses. But, so getting everyone on the same page was challenge number 1. All right. Yeah. Challenge number 2 was figuring out what we call ourselves, right? And how we fit in. And how do we make, and there's the external audience, and then there's the internal audience of West Hollywood. Because inside West Hollywood, we had to convince the residents that we were adding something of value to the city. All right. And that came in part, yes, 83% of voters in West Hollywood voted for legal cannabis. But they didn't necessarily want a dispensary next to their house, right? And there was a dispensary just outside of our city borders. I'm talking like 20 feet outside of our city borders, and it was creating a nuisance. Mm-hmm. And even though our city had no control of that, we had to push back and understand that. It was that we had to show how our businesses were doing better, and we had to hold each of our businesses had to hold the others accountable, so that every hour they're patrolling the neighborhood to make sure people aren't smoking in the neighborhoods, and really taking that relationship with the community into heart. Mm-hmm. And I think you've seen there's none of the cannabis businesses are actually located in the Sunset Strip live music district. There's a dispensary and a lounge on the Sunset Strip, but it's not really in the heart of what people know. Same with the LGBT district. We're not competing for the same real estate. And I think the third kind of pain point, and it was really a pain point, was when we tried our first special event. So we held the first ever city-sanctioned cannabis street fair on Halloween last year. And it was in the middle of Santa Monica Boulevard. And it was the first time doing it. So the city imposed a lot of requirements on us in terms of odor mitigation and visual mitigations and security and a lot of things that maybe were not necessarily necessary, but having done it without any incidents, we're hopeful that they will reduce some of those burdens to doing these in the future. And, we're looking at an event that, it cost a lot of money, and convincing, the cannabis businesses to buy into this, was a challenge. And so we hope to bring that back. But we have to deal with the, economic realities of, making an event pencil out, because, in California, for whatever reason, we still prohibit sales of cannabis after 10 p.m. And, to do a Halloween event that starts at 6 p.m., you only got 4 hours, right? So, obviously you want to make the most of it. But, I think by doing things like events and by having these spaces, these new retail spaces and these lounges, and doing it without a problem, without like people, stumbling around the neighborhood and no emergency medical calls. That's how we change hearts and minds and normalize cannabis so that other places maybe will be more progressive and thoughtful and be like, hey, this wasn't a problem in West Hollywood, so maybe we can sell cannabis until midnight instead of 10 p.m. Maybe we can, allow for these things to happen. And yeah, when you go first, you've got to prove the haters wrong, and that's what we're doing.
Awesome. Well, you heard from Scott. You got policy, you got to organize your cannabis stakeholders, you got to unite around a common strategy and brand for a destination of kind of what you're offering, and then start marketing and building those products. Congrats on the first special event. That's a huge milestone. And it's not easy being the first, right? So that's great work. Last question: what's ahead for the future? What would you like to see happen in the next, 3 to 5 years? I guess. What are people saying about West Hollywood in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, we want to finish getting these businesses open. We still have 10 lounges that aren't open, and I don't know whether the market can bear that. But the way that we make the market bear it is by growing the pie, making sure that people know that this is the only place in LA that you can come and do this, and just let it. People don't necessarily know that this exists. So getting that word out there, and getting that word out there, we will do that by, going to events, and trade shows in the cannabis industry, in travel industry, folks that are already coming to West Hollywood, and maybe they think they know what it's about because they've been to the Viper Room in the Abbey. Well, this is something new.
Totally different.
So let's get these businesses open. Second, I want us to be able to do Halloween and Pride events, where people can come and have safe space to consume cannabis while they're at these events that draw hundreds of thousands of people to the city each year. And along with that, maybe this is going to be some breaking news, but we are working on our own West Hollywood Awards that will acknowledge LGBT, female, BIPOC, justice challenged owned brands, to kind of elevate brands that, are challenged on a social justice basis. And so, there's a lot of talk in the industry about social justice and, taking care of the sins of governments past. We want to do that in action by acknowledging and elevating, brands that are owned by LGBT people, women, BIPOC folks, etc. Which is something that's not really happening out there. You can tell me what the best rosin is in the state, but like, who are the gay brands and who are the good ones? Who are the female-owned brands? Because in this community, there's a lot of the reputation, right? There's a lot of reputation in the community about who owns the businesses, and if you go to, when I've been to Spanibus, right, in Barcelona, it's basically like Weed Pride, 10,000 people, bunch of booths, stage, music. It's very much straight white guys, right? And that's not where this industry started with cannabis, and it's not where the future is. The future is introducing cannabis to new markets and getting folks who may not be willing to walk into one of those old school dispensaries, have a place where they, feel completely normal walking into, so you're like Beverly Hills. What I want is the Beverly Hills housewife to walk into our stores and feel no shame. If you don't feel like you're doing anything wrong, don't feel like they have to have the sunglasses on, like they're doing something shady. Come here. Everyone's welcome.
Amazing. Scott Schmidt, Executive Director of the Emerald Village of West Hollywood. Scott, thank you for joining us today. Everybody, this is Travel Tuesday, part of the Beard Bros Media Network Live. I'm Brian Applegarth. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next month.
All right.
And we'll drop in, I'll make sure that we put the the Emerald Village website and Instagram somewhere. So it's